Hey, I'm Melissa from Welcome to the Woods. This video is going to show you how I built raised garden beds out of concrete that were so beautiful and modern until the very last step when I ruined them. I have an amazing vision for the corner of this yard to build an entertaining area that includes concrete garden beds. So here I'm measuring out and marking with white spray paint where I'm going to dig so that I can get my utilities marked. Once the utilities came and flaked everything off, the only thing I had to worry about was a gas line, but they're buried so deep that as long as I dig by hand and I'm careful when I install my rebar, then there won't be any interference. So then I got to work digging all the sod out by hand. A lot of this is just weeds because it's sunny in this corner. We can't really get grass to grow great, but the sod that's in good shape, I'm going to haul off and use in another area of my yard. So I'm trying to repurpose it, as you can see here. Working out here in the hot sun during the summertime, it can be so exhausting, depleting, and sometimes even dangerous if I'm not replacing electrolytes. I've recently gotten better about this thanks to the sponsor of this video, Element.
Did you know that recent research shows it can be just as dangerous to have too low of sodium levels in your diet as it can too high, and that optimal health outcomes occur at 2 to 3 times the government recommendation of sodium levels?
That's where Element comes in. Element is an electrolyte drink mix trying to help people live the salty lifestyle. It's made with clean ingredients and sugar-free.
My favorite flavors have been the fruity ones like watermelon and raspberry. Nothing hydrates me better when I'm working hard than Element. I am someone who is perpetually underhydrated. I find it hard to take breaks and get enough water in while I'm working, but with Element, I have been able to achieve that electrolyte balance that prevents me from getting headaches at the end of the day because I didn't drink enough water. It makes the water that I am consuming a lot more effective at hydrating me. New and returning Element drinkers will get a free sample pack with any purchase using my link drinkelement.com/welcome to the woods. Click it below. And this is including one of every flavor, so you get to try them all out. If you don't like it, it's risk-free. Simply give it away to another salty friend and Element will refund your money. No questions asked. This offer is exclusive to my channel, so if you want that free sample pack, be sure to use my link below.
With the sod removed, this corner of my yard is about to become so amazing. Let's turn my dream into reality. I began by digging 2 inches down for a trench and tamping the black dirt just so that I can start out with something stable. I'm going to add in those 2 inches paver base, which is the aggregate you usually lay down before retaining walls, and I just thought this would give me a stable substrate to build my concrete planters. I dumped multiple bags, leveled it out, and then tamped it to 2 inches thick. The trench kind of held it into place where I'm going to build my walls. I ordered all the concrete block for my project from Home Depot. They delivered it on a big semi on pallets they placed right outside my fence to my backyard. I started by placing the block myself, thinking I had a good idea about how to level these, but I didn't really know what I was doing. I knew leveling each one individually wasn't really going to work because eventually I was going to figure out how to mortar the joints. And because I was feeling a little in over my head, I called in my neighbor to help me, John. He's helped me on other projects in the past, and John actually worked in concrete for some of his career, so he had a big old mixer. With John there, I obviously felt a lot more confident, but I also didn't really want to get in his way. I let the master do his thing, so I'll try my best to explain what he taught me. You are going to lay a mortar bed, inch or 2 thick, and you're going to level each of your corners. So you set, for us, we're creating an L shape, and we're setting the 3 corners. I love this clip, how intently I'm watching him. So basically, once you have your 3 corners set, you set up this little jig, which is a piece of wood that is tensioned onto the edge of your block, stringing a line that shows you not only level, but straight as you build your wall. You can see that in the corner it looks like that, and those little pins hold the line at exactly the edge of the block. These are measured out so that your course of block will actually work out exactly. The mortar between is accounted for in the size of the actual block. It's not really 16 inches. That includes the 3/8 inch mortar joint. So I helped as much as I could. I scooped excess mortar off of the block and added it back to his piece of plywood he was using as a hock. I also scooped mortar out of the mixer and added that to his hock for him to work from, and I brought him endless amounts of block. But all in all, I really couldn't have done this project without John's help. It's super labor intensive, and if you're going to take on something like this, I would definitely recommend having at least a set of 2 hands. I've built a couple retaining walls, but I have never worked with concrete block, and learning from John, working on this project with him, I feel like I learned a lot. Maybe in the future I could build a foundation for a shed or something like that. One of the things John taught me was that the block actually has a top and bottom, which I never knew. If you look closely, a block that looks like this has a wider middle for the top and then a skinnier middle at the bottom. The flat end blocks, you can just tell by texture. So the rougher side goes on the bottom and the smoother side goes on top. I always think adding the last block in that course, how it fits perfectly, is the most satisfying. Before the mortar dried entirely, I came in and did what's called striking the mortar joint. So you use this metal curved tool and you push the mortar into each of the joints between the blocks. You start with your vertical seams and then you do your horizontal ones. This is going to make sure that the joint is nice and strong. I also came across and brushed excess mortar off, moving in a diagonal, so I didn't take mortar out of the joint. This is super similar to cleaning grout with a tile job. We continuously kept checking that our courses were level, eventually pulling out my laser level and measuring from the line to make sure that all 3 corners of what we were building were the same height. To stabilize the wall and prevent any cracking or shifting that might happen, I decided rebar was necessary. So I pounded down rebar that was 4 feet long and 1/2 inch thick every 3 or 4 openings in the block. So I think I put in 13 pieces of rebar total. Not gonna lie, this was hard work. I wish it went as fast as the sped up version. Whenever the rebar would go wonky, I would shove some rocks in there to hold it in the center of the cavity. Sometimes when I pounded down, it would hit a rock below and I would have to move it to a different cavity and try again. The cavities where I put down the rebar, I'm filling with concrete. So I could have filled these with mortar, but I was out of bags and I did have some bags of concrete, so I did that. This is called core filling, and it's what stabilizes the rebar and connects it to the wall to give it that strength. 1 or 2 of the rebar didn't make it as low down as it needed because I ran into an obstacle. So after the core fill had dried, I came with a diamond blade on my angle grinder and cut into that metal rebar enough that I could pound it off and just get rid of that excess. Now it's time for me to prove that I learned something from John because he's not here working with me this day. I had to lay the very last course of block by myself. This is for the edge of my concrete planter. So this is not going to be a full 8x16 block. This is going to be a top cap, which is 4 inches solid and then 16 inches wide and 8 inches tall. The addition of this final course brings the height of the whole planter to 32 inches tall, which I think is the perfect height for planting, weeding, etc. As I got into it, I found myself making silly mistakes like this, where I forgot to add any mortar to the vertical joint. I only did the horizontal. But after a while, I got the hang of it. I was able to lay this entire course by myself, but it took me all day. It's definitely a job that's easier with helping hands because John and I got the first 3 courses done in a day as well. So because these are 4 inches instead of 8 inches like the blocks below, I have these gaps at the end, which I cut pieces of the paver to fit in there and did my best to hide them in inconspicuous spots. The way I cut them was with my diamond blade on my angle grinder again. Ideally, I would have a bigger saw diamond blade, but this, I was just working with what I had, and I couldn't go all the way through the block with this blade, so I slammed it down and broke it, but oftentimes the break wasn't beautiful. I just had to kind of fudge that with the mortar joint. So this is how it looks when the building was done. It is awesome, but it is not quite beautiful. So now I'm going to go on to finishing work. I'm going to coat the brick in water with my little sprayer. Then I use a stiff bristle brush to brush any mortar off and any imperfections on the wall, because we're going to do like a feather finish using this Surecrete Sure Broom. This is a concrete product that was actually left over from when I did my step, and it's meant to refinish existing concrete, and it's meant to be mixed very thin so you can kind of put it on like paint. I didn't know how it was going to go for a vertical surface, so at first I tried to trowel it on and that was a no-go. Then I tried to squeegee it on, but I couldn't get enough on my squeegee to really move it around. I ended up taking cups of it and pouring it onto my squeegee and then moving it onto the wall. It's important the wall's wet so that this product adheres. My daughter Lily actually wanted to come help with this part, so we kind of did this together. I didn't have a ton of this product. I was worried I would run out because it's on back order and it's quite expensive, but I did end up getting the whole thing mostly coated in one layer. It's just very thin. So the next day when it had dried, I came and put some thin pieces of plywood over my holes. The extra concrete blocks got dropped in as fill, as well as the rocks that I dug up out of the dirt. The next layer was something that was going to eventually decompose. It's pieces of trees that I had cut in the past, like logs. And then I finally started filling my dirt with about 10-12 inches thick of soil. So the bottom layer is just kind of crappy dirt that I had dug up out of this corner, and then the rest, the top 6 inches, is going to be nice compost and topsoil I purchased at the store. Now it's finally time for the fun part, plants. All of the plants I'm adding to this are native species to Minnesota. I'm excited to have them in a raised garden bed because it will help me control them and care for them so they don't spread all over. I really should have just stopped at this point because I think it looks really beautiful, but it was just bothering me that that thin coat allowed me to still see all of the block lines underneath. It just didn't really give me a smooth finish like what I was envisioning. So I went to the store and I looked at my options and I picked up this product, which is meant for vertical walls, but what I didn't catch is that it is fiber reinforced. I've never worked with concrete that has fiberglass in it before, but I mixed it up per the bag's instructions, like the ratio of water, and then I applied it to the wall the same way I did the previous skim coat, where I wet it down and I spread it with a squeegee. This was thicker, and so it did build to about 1/8 of an inch, and it really smoothed out all of those block lines I wanted to get rid of. But as I was spreading, I noticed all of the fiberglass and I was like, man, what is this going to look like when it dries? Well, let me tell you, bad. It looked really bad. The next day when it dried, I noticed that it basically looked like it had fuzzy hair. I also used more product than I anticipated. I mixed up 2 batches and the line is clearly visible where I started one batch and stopped the other. It looks so bad. Did I ruin my wall? Or can you guys in the comments help me figure out how to fix this? I obviously need to do another skim coat of some kind, but how do I get off the fiberglass first? Because I don't want that poking through the next coat I apply as well. I'll share more about this landscaping project in the future. You'll have to subscribe to see how this turns out. I guess you can't win them all. To be continued.